Treasure Island is probably the most concentrated educational experience I've had in my life because while we were building the pirate ships and all the automation systems for the ships and special effects and all the other stuff, we were building the building. So I didn't know anything about construction really and pouring concrete and running conduit and all of the things you have got to know to
Yeah.
build a casino. But I've been put in that position to basically help manage all of that out front. And so, I grabbed basically the heads of the departments for the plumbers and the electricians and the concrete guys. I'm like, look, I don't know anything about what you guys do, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna show up here in 5 months with two giant ships, and they gotta have a place to go.
Well, hello, and thanks for joining me again on another great episode of Gears of Gear. I guess you'll determine whether it's great or not, but I think based on today's guest, you're going to be pretty happy and probably it'll be quite enjoyable. Um, so, what do I want to talk about today? Of course, AI. AI obviously making huge advancements. It's hard to keep up. Like every week, somebody else is leading the charge. One interesting piece of news this past week is that there was this huge battle with OpenAI where they were not so open. They were taking basically a not for profit company and turning it into a for profit company. And Elon, who was one of the founders of OpenAI, was against this. So he started a lawsuit against Sam Altman and against the company to stop that from happening. And eventually they stopped. So just as of, I think, last week, OpenAI now is no longer going to become a for profit company. They are going to remain a not for profit. And I'm not sure what that does to their value or to their profitability or to their shareholder wealth or anything, but it's an interesting move. I don't know if they just kind of backpedaled because it was becoming impossible or for some other reason. Maybe they just became really good people all of a sudden and changed their mind. Um, I will say that until about a month ago, I wasn't really using ChatGPT very much. I was using Grok more. And it was because I just liked the way that it responded. I liked the way that it helped write things. I don't use anything written by AI completely, but I will collaborate with AI on it. And I just liked Grok better. And then recently, I've really found actually ChatGPT to have gotten a lot better than it used to be, both for those collaborating writing jobs or research jobs, or I use it a lot for strategy. Like, here's what I'm thinking with my business or with this situation or with this solution. What do you think? And you come up with some really, really great solutions by doing that. And so, yeah, I've used ChatGPT a lot. The other thing is ChatGPT now really does a good job with images. So if you're doing a slide deck or you're doing something internally with your team or whatever, and you need some simple images, I might not make my all my marketing images or something through ChatGPT, but if you need something relatively simple and quick, it's pretty good at it. Or if you need to edit an image that you already have, let's say you have a picture of a car and you want to make it, they used an example where they turned, I don't remember what car it was, but they turned it into a convertible. And it did a really good job of that. However, yesterday I was showing it to someone who is trying to learn. He's a 71-year-old guy trying to learn how to use AI. And I was over at his house just having coffee. And he said, well, take a picture of my wife and put an ice cream cone in her hand. Show me if you can do that. And I did that. And it did a really good job, except that she had three hands. So it was really funny because the hand that she was holding the ice cream cone in had her original hand and then this new one with the ice cream cone. They both had the exact same ring on the finger. It was really wild. Again, AI is not going to be perfect. One of the problems you'll see is lying or making up answers, which they call hallucinations in the AI world. I just call it lying or making shit up. But that can be problematic. So you don't want to just use everything it writes. Anyways, I've been using ChatGPT a lot more. And one of the things I've learned is this thing called the Socratic method. And many of you listening are probably smarter than me, and you'll know what that is. I didn't know. So what that involves is a lot of question asking, as opposed to just telling it, do this for me. So I will say, I'm looking to create this plan. And what kind of questions do you need to ask me in order to move forward with this plan as well informed as you can possibly be to help me? And so the answers you get and the results and the plan that you'll get from that versus just telling it to do it is unbelievable. Like, it is so much better. It's almost like using the Socratic method when you're talking to your employees or your children. Like, your kid does something wrong and they come in with the sad face on and, am I grounded, Daddy? And you say, well, what do you think? Do you think you should be grounded? Tell me what I should do. Those types of things. And so if you haven't done it and you're using ChatGPT or Grok or whatever it is you're using, Gemini, Claude, and etc., because they keep popping up. But whatever you're using, just type into it and say, hey, can you tell me how I might use the Socratic method of prompting? And I think you're going to find some really, really great results from that. So try it. It's a cool little hack. I like it a lot. And what else? Of course, I've told you a few times that I'm building something with AI right now that's very cool. I'm not going to tell you too many details, but I will tell you that it is a very advanced, very necessary platform for cross rentals that is going to just really democratize access to global inventory, global gear that currently is very fragmented. It's it's kind of the Wild West out there. Like, if you're looking for cross rental gear for a big tour or something, it is so hard to find things. You got to make 1,000 phone calls. We're really changing that. So believe it or not, we're going to be launching pretty quickly, probably early July, I hope. We might even be launching sort of a half version of it just so that we can share it with some people in the background within the next few weeks. But we've been working on it for a while. I've been envisioning this thing since probably 2006 or 7. So I hope you'll support it. I hope you'll like it. I hope you'll appreciate the effort and the science that we've put into this thing. But it is very heavily reliant on especially agentic AI agents that we've built to really do all of that work for you, to find that gear for you so that you don't have to do it yourself. And so I'm pretty excited about that. I have learned a lot on that journey, obviously. I've learned a lot about AI, about how to basically launch an AI platform, what the costs are. So, every time you do something on ChatGPT, someone somewhere is paying for that server time. And of course, OpenAI has many hundreds of billions of dollars that they've raised in order to do this. We don't. So that comes at a cost that we're looking at pretty hard right now and figuring out what the business model looks like and stuff, which we know. But anyways, yeah, I hope you'll support it. We're going to be launching more information soon. If you want to talk to me about it, just reach out to me. By the way, one of the best ways to reach me, if you ever want to have a meeting with me or sit in my office and just chit chat or have me look at something in your business or whatever it is, our platform that we operate, our company, our virtual platform is Roam. And so it's ro.am/Marcel. That's my calendar. So if you ever want access to my calendar to book a meeting directly into it without even asking me, go ahead, ro.am/Marcel. That's how you get to my calendar. So today's guest is a good one, and they all are. I love all of our guests, but today's guest is really super interesting. Former president and CEO at Fisher Technical Services. Of course, that's Scott Fisher. Scott is the founder and former CEO of Fisher Technical Services, FTSI, where he developed the industry-changing Navigator control system for live entertainment and film automation. After merging FTSI with Tait, Scott shifted focus to motion control and stunt rigging for major feature films. With decades of experience across touring themed attractions and cinema, Scott brings deep insight into the intersection of technology and storytelling. So I am hoping he's going to want to do some storytelling today. And here you go, Scott Fisher. How are you?
I'm great.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Scott Fisher. So it's funny when people have done as many things as you've done at the level that you've done them. And I've been in this industry, I hate to say 35 years, but I don't know you, and I don't even know if I've met you at a trade show or anything. Like really
Yeah.
don't know you. I didn't know who did the things that we're going to talk about. And now I know that that's you, obviously. So between not knowing you and and also not knowing much about automation, which is where you've spent much of your career, I'm really looking forward to learning here today. So
Excellent.
thanks first and foremost for taking some time to come on.
No, my pleasure.
Yeah. And so a lot of the people I get on this podcast are very public and, call it even braggy. Some people, where every day they're posting Instagram pictures of, look at the rig I did today. Look at the thing I designed yesterday. Look at the thing I designed last week, which is great. I mean, in our industry, it's a very visual industry. People love scrolling through lighting images
Yep.
on Instagram or whatever. And you're really not, like I went looking through your call it socials and there's just nothing out there. There's not much going on.
Yeah, I take the behind the scenes thing seriously, I guess.
Yeah,
I try to
yeah,
keep a relatively low profile and let the
yeah,
gear speak for itself, I guess.
yeah. No, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we'll get into some of the stuff you've done and the projects that you've been involved in are just mind blowing. Like if anyone could brag, I think it's you. So, I like to kind of go in the Wayback Machine and talk about how people got into the industry because
Sure.
so many people, believe it or not, who listen to this podcast are young people who are just entering the industry and they want to hear from, it's called Geezers of Gear because I'd say a good 60% of our guests are call it 50 plus. And,
Yeah, I could
and
order off the senior menu now.
oh, can you? Yeah, I'm almost there. I'm
Yeah.
almost at the senior menu, but I'm not quite there yet. So maybe I'll get a fake ID in the
There
opposite
you go.
direction of what we did when we were kids, right?
Yeah,
Get a fake
exactly.
ID that says that I'm old enough to order off the senior menu and get the senior discount in hotels and 2 days. Podcast is proudly brought to you by ETC. For 50 years, ETC has made a name for itself in much more than the theater world. ETC lighting, rigging, and control technology has scaled not only across the entire globe, but also to nearly any building size and type you could possibly imagine. Broadway shows, rock concerts, sports stadiums, outdoor parks, TV studios, convention centers, you name it, have all trusted ETC to make their design beautiful and their spaces safe. A big part of that trust comes from ETC's renowned customer support. The global 24/7 tech support team stands behind every ETC product. Whether you're in the middle of tech on a high school theater production or scheduling a light show on the facade of an iconic building, ETC's support has always been incredibly responsive and helpful. But now employees have even more of a personal stake in maintaining that reputation. The company has become 100% employee owned. Each person building the fixtures, developing the control software, and picking up support calls is an owner at ETC. Outstanding support, reliable products, innovative technology. This is the foundation of excellence that ETC has built over the past 50 years. So, how did you get into this industry? How did you get started? Did you go to school for it? Did you just fall into it?
I didn't go to school for it. I was on the stage crew in high school and loved it. Like it was like all I wanted to do, but I didn't think that was a real job because I didn't know anybody who did it. Nobody in my family did it. I didn't know him. I had no entry into it. So I went to school for electrical engineering instead, thinking that would get me a real job. But to pay for school, I was doing stagehand work like on the weekends and
Oh,
nights
cool. Yeah.
in the greater Philadelphia area, I guess Atlantic City, Wilmington, Philly, Baltimore, around there, unloading trucks, running the spotlight, whatever they had going that paid money.
So you went out and like met up with the lighting companies or whatever and
Basically,
said,
yeah, I
hey,
just went and said, hey,
gun for hire.
yeah, pretty much like,
Yeah.
focused, aligning Lecos and that kind of stuff, at night for
Yeah.
lighting, that kind of old school, I guess, sort of stuff.
Doing that today is probably a little bit harder, right? Like I think most of
Probably.
the companies are a lot more corporate. There's an HR department involved. There's
Yeah.
possibly private equity owners who
Yeah.
are
They want to see a
very,
degree. They want to see,
liability adverse, call it.
yeah,
So you probably can't just show up in t-shirts and blue jeans or whatever and get a gig from any old company these days as easily as you used to do it back in our day, I
true.
guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So you just started out doing odd gigs and you were planning on being an electrical engineer.
Yeah, basically.
And today's podcast is brought to you by Artistry in Motion. When it's time to make a moment unforgettable, Artistry in Motion delivers. Since 1994, they've been the go-to source for top-tier confetti and streamer special effects, turning ordinary events into explosive, show-stopping experiences. From concerts and TV productions to major sporting events and theme parks, they bring the wow factor with precision and creativity. So whether you need a massive stadium drop or a subtle, picture-perfect cascade, they make it happen on time, every time. Their team doesn't just supply confetti, they collaborate with show designers, event planners, and production teams to ensure every effect is camera ready and crowd approved. Want to take your next event to the next level? Hit them up, artistryinmotion.com, and let's make memories happen.
Oh, I got a job at Bally's in Atlantic City on
Okay.
the stage crew there, and Steve Wynn had just sold that to Bally's. It used to be the Golden Nugget, and he sold that partially to finance the construction of the Mirage in Vegas. So he
Okay.
took a bunch of people with him when he went to Vegas, and some of those people were in the entertainment department, and they were in the process of putting up the Siegfried and Roy show there, and quickly found that the technical level of that show was more than your average stagehand had on hand. And
Yeah.
one of my friends mentioned to the entertainment director, hey, we know this kid back in Atlantic City just got his degree, shows up to work on time, give him a call. And I get this random phone call from the entertainment director going, do you want a job? Largely undefined, basically.
Weird.
I'm like, sure. And White Tigers, that sounds fun. And they're like,
That's
when can you be
wild.
there? And I'm like, I could start driving tomorrow, man. So I
Wow.
drove from Jersey to Vegas without anywhere to live or anything to do, and didn't know what the job description really was, but showed up and started working. That was my
That is
introduction.
that's pretty wild. Like,
Yeah,
especially from Vegas. Like, you'd think that in Vegas they'd be able to find a person to do that, but I guess
yeah.
because
At the
there was at
time,
least a perceived skill set match, perhaps,
at
right?
the time, the center of technology was Broadway, because you had
Okay.
Phantom of the Opera, you had Starlight Express, you had all the big Andrew Lloyd Webber stuff going on, and in fact, the companies that came out to build the first Vegas shows were Broadway companies,
Okay.
Showtech and at the time ECTS, which became PRG, were
Yeah.
in Vegas, basically bringing the technology with them
Right.
and the people.
Yeah. I remember that. Like I don't even remember whether I was with Martin or High End. What year did the Mirage open?
Yeah, beginning of 1990, 89 was when we were doing it in Siegfried and Roy production.
Okay. So it wasn't even the Mirage. I thought it was a bit later. I thought it was 95 or something, 94 or 95.
Mirage
I guess I'm
was
wrong.
1990. Treasure Island was 93.
Okay. Maybe it was Treasure Island then.
Bellagio was 97.
Yeah, it probably was Treasure Island. I had sold them some lights. It was Treasure
Yeah,
Island. I had sold them some lighting, and I went for the opening. I was invited for the opening, and I remember walking through this nice hotel and going to my room. And at the same time that the hotel opened, as I recall, was it the Mirage? I'm getting all confused now. It was either the Mirage or Treasure Island, but whichever one it was, Grateful Dead were in town that weekend during the opening at the stadium at UNLV or whatever,
Right.
and and so there were these deadheads sleeping in the hallways of this nice brand new hotel, and they were just like all over it with
Camped.
sleeping bags in the hallways. So I was stepping over these Grateful Dead fans that were sleeping in hallways, and they were like showering in the casino bathrooms, like cleaning themselves up and stuff in casino bathrooms. It was hilarious. It was so funny. But yeah, so so that's pretty cool. Like you get hired and brought into Vegas. I mean, as a kid living on the East Coast, that must have been like, whoa, like all
Yeah,
your
I had
friends
like
went, wow,
never been out
dude.
of Jersey before that, so it was.
Really?
Oh yeah,
That's
I hadn't been
crazy.
on an airplane before. It was brave new world,
That is crazy. That's wild.
but it
And
was to say it
oh,
was incredibly lucky in
yeah,
retrospect because that was right at the start of the big, mega building boom
right.
of Las Vegas. So
Yeah. So do you still, you don't still live in Vegas, do you?
I do actually.
Oh,
I
okay.
split my time between East Coast and Vegas, but I still have a house there, and I'm still a resident of
Oh,
Nevada.
okay. Okay, cool. So from there, like, did that kind of launch, the big part of your career, I guess, at that time when,
Yeah, because up to that point I'd been mostly a lighting guy, um,
yeah,
and I have a very distinct memory of walking into the back of the house at Siegfried and Roy. They had the Dragon on stage, uh, trying to program that, and this was this big 40-foot tall 21 axis hydraulic dragon that breathed fire, and it was enormous. And I'm like, oh, that's what I want to do, you know. So
so
that's
what
how
was your gig there when you weren't doing the automation there? You were doing other,
I
yeah.
basically got brought out to be a smart guy who showed up on time. Like they didn't actually have a
Wow.
role for me other than my eventual title became technical rover, which was
Interesting.
basically be anywhere on stage that something is happening so that if it breaks you can fix it.
Yeah,
So
that's interesting.
yeah.
And so how did that sort of grow into like a career in Vegas basically that created so
Um,
many different offshoots from it?
yeah, I mean the Vegas was basically becoming the epicenter of entertainment technology as these big shows got, continued to push
Right.
the envelope of like never been done before, never been done before, never been done before. Um, but I wanted to kind of gather up a bunch of skills because I just liked the whole thing. So I did Siegfried and Roy for about a year and a half, and then I went and did some touring stuff with Foy for performer flying.
Oh, okay.
I flew Paula Abdul on her tour, and
Jeez.
then came back to Vegas and was one of the project managers for the Treasure Island Buccaneer Bay pirate battle. And then left again after that, went to work for a special effects company that did theme park stuff for a while. The guys who did like the backdraft ride and the other stuff. So I learned about flames and special effects and liquid nitrogen and explosions
Wow.
and stuff. And then came back to Vegas and did EFX, like which had a huge amount of special effects in it. Um,
Right. Yeah,
13.
I was in Vegas during when EFX was being built, and I remember Jerry Harris and Tim Brennan taking me for a like a grand tour
Hmm.
before the show had launched, and I remember there were like I think there were four lighting programmers who were programming on CompuLight animators at the
Hmm.
time. This is pre-Hog, and going under the stage and seeing all of this automation. I didn't know what most of it was. I didn't know
Yeah,
what any of it was really, but they were explaining it to me, and I was like, "Whoa!" I think at the time that was like the most expensive show,
it
right?
was absolutely.
Yeah,
That
and
was
way
that
over
was probably
budget.
the first of the completely open checkbook shows
Yeah,
of like they just went out to the neighbors kind of
yeah,
thing. And there was a
yeah,
series of those, typically between MGM and Win, but
yeah.
there was a whole bunch of money is no objects, which was again super lucky to be in that environment at that time. Uh, I mean, it felt almost like the post World War II aerospace industry. It's like where you're building a new jet every 3 weeks,
Yeah.
and then you come up with the SR-71 or something, or the Saturn V, and it's like, oh, if
Well,
you weren't there at that time, you wouldn't have been involved with that stuff. And this
or AI
entertainment
right
wise, it felt
now.
like that.
Yeah, AI right now, what's happening with AI, where it's like just doubling itself
Yeah,
so quickly, and they're saying like within 1 year it's going to do this, and then it does that in 4 months,
right.
and then it triples again in the next 4 months, and you're like, what is it? The speed is picking up, and it's just getting so crazy. But yeah, so I could see that'd be a really exciting time to be
It
there.
was amazing. Yep.
So,
And
so EFX was your introduction to automation, or you were
no, Siegfried and Roy
already
was my intro to
immersed?
automation. Um,
Oh, it was.
uh, I was, what was I? I was assistant head of automation, I guess, was my final title
Okay.
there. But running all the winches and the hydraulics and the big robotic dragon and all the craziness there. And then kind of went on to learn other stuff at other companies and then basically circle back to automation.
So was that on purpose? Like, did you
Yeah.
did you just go, oh yeah, this is cool. I want to do this. Like you mentioned the dragon before, and how it was like, whoa, yeah, that's what I want to do,
Yeah.
and it
That's
just worked
what
out.
you get to play with all of the toys at the same time in automation.
Yeah.
Like you got hydraulics, pneumatics, electrical stuff, closed loop controls, computer controls, like all of it's in that basket, and you've got to sort of know a little about all of it.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
and just so many wows, it's just like, having the audience in awe all the time because things are moving
yep.
and yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And so after Siegfried and Roy did you say EFX was the next one that you got involved on
For
from an
me, the
automation
next thing
standpoint?
was I did some rock and roll touring, and then came back to
Okay.
Vegas and did Treasure Island, the
Rock and roll
pirate ship.
touring for, again, automation?
Yeah, winches and that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
Performer flying.
Yeah. And then Treasure Island. So Treasure
Treasure Island,
Island,
the pirate
you
battle
had, oh,
and the
you did the
Mysterious
pirate battle.
and the
Oh,
Mysterious show.
wow.
Yeah. I was
Very
working for
cool.
Showtech at the time, and they had the
Very
contract
cool.
for both the pirate battle and the Mysterious show in the theater, so I was bouncing back and forth between those
Wow.
two.
Huh. And so how big of a team are you working on for automation at that point? Like, is it 5 people? Is it 50 people? What is it?
Uh, in the Showtech shop, it was mostly the bulk of the people were fabricators, like
Yeah.
welders, machinists, that kind of stuff. The team of guys doing actual automation, maybe six,
Yeah.
eight. So
Doing big stuff. Like,
we never
was,
slept, basically, never went home.
yeah. I can't even imagine that. So the pirate battle, like, was that one of the harder things that you had to do at that point? I remember there were all
Yeah,
kinds of, like Steve Terry talked about some stuff, with dimmer failures or something, or I don't
yeah.
remember what he was saying. Something.
The ground loop problems with the yeah
Yeah, yeah.
trip.
And
You had the GFI lights, but they didn't really want to be GFI'd.
well, and it's just you don't know what you don't know. When you're doing projects that have never been done before, you
Yeah,
kind of learn as you go a little bit, right? You can try and do
yeah.
the math as much as you want, but
Treasure Island is probably the most concentrated educational experience I've had in my life because while we were building the pirate ships and all the automation systems for the ships and special effects and all the other stuff, we were building the building. So I didn't know anything about construction really, and pouring concrete and running conduit and all of the things you have got to know to
yeah,
build a casino. But I've been put in that position to basically help manage all of that out front. And so, I grabbed basically the heads of the departments for the plumbers and the electricians and the concrete guys. I'm like, look, I don't know anything about what you guys do, but
yeah,
I'm gonna show up here in 5 months with two giant ships, and they gotta have a place to go. So we gotta help each other out here. And they were great. They kind of took me under their wings a little bit, I guess, and just basically explained how their jobs worked and what they did and what they needed. And I explained, what we were doing and what we needed to do, and we were able to collaborate. Of like, the electricians would get behind in like the north end of the property, and I'd say, okay, well, I'll move my guys over to the south and we'll work there for a week while you guys finish that up. We'll swap, and all this sort of horse trading going on in the background. And I learned an astonishing amount of stuff, both on our end, on the entertainment end, as well as the construction end, which really helped me out later doing theme park work for
yeah.
Disney and those guys.
I read, I think it was in your notes about the Michael Jackson thing with Treasure Island. So what was that
Yeah.
about?
So we had built the ships off the strip, not too far off the strip, but we were past Industrial Road, if you know Vegas,
Of course, yeah.
kind of kind of back on Wynn Road. And we had a big warehouse, and we actually had to cut a wall out of the warehouse and knock it out to get the ships out of the uh, which
Wow.
but basically we took them down Tropicana over the bridge over 15, and then hung a left onto the strip. But we had to get Nevada Power involved to lift power lines, and there's this enormous piece, and there's this giant crane sitting in front of Treasure Island waiting to crane it in. But we did it at like 3 in the morning because they had to close the strip basically, both directions. And
And what were they
because
carrying it on, like a massive flatbed
Yeah,
or
one of those
something?
big things with the
Yeah,
multi-axle,
yeah, yeah.
we craned it into place in the parking lot of the building onto that thing, and then they drove it over. But because it was such an event, Steve Wynn wanted to make a little more of an event out of it. So he and Michael Jackson rode the pirate ship down the strip at 3 in the morning before we craned it in. So they're like up on the bow while we're like trying to make sure we don't take out any power lines or knock down palm trees or whatever with the thing. Um, Bob
And
Gurr
work.
was also involved. He did most of the mechanical design. He's a legendary guy from Imagineering and Disney,
Yeah.
and he was on the ship as well. And I learned a ton working with him as well at the
So
time.
were crowds lining the streets? Like, did
Yeah.
people know about this? It had been
Yeah,
announced.
they it wasn't like in the paper or anything, but people kind of knew, and the word got out. So yeah, there were people taking pictures and on the,
I guess when you're Steve Wynn, you can just kind of call up MJ and say, "Hey,
especially
I need you to
yeah,
do this
and
thing." Yeah.
MJ had been involved in the Siegfried and Roy show. He wrote the theme song and he loved
Oh,
playing
of
with the
course. I
Tigers.
forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, there was an evening where he came and we showed him how to run the dragon, and he got to play with the dragon and make the fire breathe and stuff like that. So
Wow.
it was a
Yeah.
weird time, but it was very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really cool. What a cool memory.
Yeah.
So, you hadn't created Navigator yet, though, right?
No.
So how did things get to that? Like, was it based on need? Like, were you doing all of these different big jobs and you were like, wait a second, we're missing
Yeah.
something in all of this?
Basically, yeah. I mean, my sort of inflection point was on building the Bellagio Theater. Um, so I had started Fisher Technical Services the year before we did Bellagio, but it was just me in a bedroom in my house, basically just
Yeah.
writing specifications and doing some mechanical design and that kind of stuff, but not actually fabricating anything.
Hmm.
So I was one of the technical project managers for the construction of the Bellagio, the O Theater,
Right.
another monstrous, open checkbook show.
Yeah.
Wrote all the specifications, got all the worked with Rick Gray and Jeanette Farmer to get all the contractors hired and get everybody managed. And just watching some of the contractors work, it's like this is painful. I can do this. And once Bellagio, basically we did the turnover from theater construction to Cirque du Soleil for production. At that point, I left and got a shop space and got a couple
Hmm.
friends and started building stuff.
Interesting. So when you were on your own working from your bedroom, a one-person company, Fisher Technical Services,
Yeah.
was that stressful? Like, as far as doing something the size of the Bellagio showroom, knowing that, if something goes wrong or whatever, you're doomed, you're out of business. You can't even blame anyone because it's just you, you know?
Yeah, it wasn't. It was it being just me was actually kind of a stress reducer because I knew even if it went all sideways, I could just go back to being a stagehand.
That's
It
true.
didn't get
Yeah.
stressful till later when I had like employees and had to make payroll and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
that is true.
Then
Yeah, then it
it's
feels much more grown up at
yeah,
that point
there
because
wasn't
it's
as
like,
much at stake for me or
yeah,
anybody who I employed in the
yeah.
beginning because there wasn't that many of us.
That's a great point. You can just, fold up your company and go back to work.
Right,
And
just
yeah,
regular work. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting. I never thought of it that way. Like, 'cause I would just think that, like if something crashes, it's nice if you have a whole bunch of people because it kind of crashes and then spreads the weight of the crash over all of
Right.
those people as opposed to it's all on me, and it
Right.
just crushes me. But you make a good point going the other direction. You don't have responsibility for all those people and expenses and etc.
Yeah.
So it's actually a little easier because if things fail, they fail. No
Yeah,
big
if it
deal.
goes
Like,
sideways, and
yeah, no
obviously
loss.
you don't want it to go sideways, but if it does, you're not like affecting people's livelihoods.
Yeah. So then you hired employees, built a shop, and then you started creating things. And was Navigator one of the
Yes.
first things, or?
No, we didn't have that many employees or that much stuff, so we basically started building small pieces of automation equipment, like little winches for specialty gags. We built the gear for the big disappearing curtain at the beginning of O, that big red curtain that flies out, and so we built some stuff for Universal Studios. Um, and we did develop basically a version one of Navigator that sort of ran kind of half on Windows, half on DOS. But we essentially were doing automation at the time was largely based on industrial equipment.
Yeah.
So basically, you would sort of get married to an industrial supplier like Allen Bradley or SEW Eurodrive or Siemens or one of those guys and basically use their equipment, put a front end on it that people could make it a little easier to program, but most of them were still kind of clunky. And then that was automation.
Yeah.
And the first versions of Navigator, we did basically the same thing. We used an industrial platform and just wrote up basically a Windows interface for it, so you could program it. But then a few years in, we got the contract to provide the automation for Larev at the Win, and this was 2003, I want to say, somewhere around there. And that was an inflection point. That was basically, and looking back on it, I still really can't believe that this was the decision, but it was, are we going to be an automation company or not? Because even writing a front end just for regular industrial gear, there's limitations to it. You're limited to what that stuff can do. And what we wanted to do was basically write and from the ground up design an entertainment automation system that was basically equipment agnostic, could talk to anything, could control anything, put it all under one wrapper, and and provide the freedom and the speed of programming you needed for shows like we had been working on, because a lot of the employees came from Cirque du Soleil and places like that, and everyone was kind of aware of, yeah, eventually it all worked, but man, it was a slog to get there, and it was tough as an operator to know what was going on at any time. And so we had this giant wish list of like, wow, I wish they would work this way or this that way, or I had these tools or I had these things. And that's when we decided to basically on the Larev contract, within the Larev timeline, go from a completely clean sheet of paper and design and build the entire Navigator automation system and implement
Wow.
it for the very first time on Larev. That was Navigator One. Was
Yeah.
Larev was the first show that we did, which was
Wow.
bonkers.
That
I've
is wild.
It was nuts. It was everything. It was consoles. It was emergency stop systems. It was motion control. It was the user interface software, all the winches, all the mechanical gear, I mean, all at the same time within like 13 months.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was
Huge.
nuts. But that was the genesis of Navigator as people know it today. Basically, there was an earlier Navigator one, and that we learned some good stuff on that as far as operator interface and where we were still deficient on tools and that kind of stuff. And then
Right.
the clean
So,
sheet Navigator.
yeah. And I don't know anything about this Navigator product, but so I read a little bit about it. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was rules. And so
Yes.
did that exist right in the beginning?
Yeah. Rules was a problem that came from a problem we had to solve on Larev. There was this giant turntable that was basically the entire ceiling of the theater that had 8, 9, 10 flying tracks in it, and it would revolve. So there was an annular area where we could pick up performers or scenery, track them in, drop them into the thing, and rotate the turntable. But the theater had a height limitation, so we had the turntable up at there, but we only had about 15 feet or so of actual height.
Ah,
So the problem is you have to have limits for your winch lines going up, and you have to have sufficient room to decelerate before you actually whack into anything hard with
yeah.
it. So if we had used regular mechanical limits, we would never be able to get anything off the ground because you'd have to stop slowing down from top speed about 10 feet away from the structure to give it time to actually
Ah,
come to a stop.
yeah.
So rules were basically a structure that we had to make for if then statements. So it would be like if you are 20 feet away from the turntable and you are still going at 10 feet per second, automatically slow down to 5. If you are 5 feet away and you're still going at 5 feet a second. So basically imagine somebody took the joystick and just floored it at the
Yeah.
ceiling, no deceleration. The rules would basically step in and take over and knock you down to speeds that you could still decelerate at. Um,
So they're like programmed limits or whatever, so
it's if
that
then statements for literally anything in the system.
yeah.
So you can relate any data from any piece of gear to any other action of any other piece of gear, whether it's just pop up a message on my screen to bring the entire system to a screeching halt. So literally any piece of data that the system has access to, it can relate to any other piece of control
And they all
function.
layer on top of each other, all of those
Yeah, they
rules.
just
So
sit
like
there in
one
the
doesn't
background.
take precedence over the next one or
Yeah,
whatever.
if you look at previously there were like theme parks, you would do a sort of a pseudo rule system where you would take a separate PLC or a separate controller and write basically supervisory rules on that and have that watch your system.
Okay.
And that sort of concept got rolled into the Navigator DNA, so it was already in there, so the operators had access to that as opposed to having to program an entire supervisory system by itself. But it
Very
became
cool.
handy. It became handy for anything. Like you could say, you know, play a voice message from speaker 2 when this lift gets to position A. You know, any if then statement you can think of, you can write basically in the rules,
Yeah.
and they just sit there and they are in the background constantly scanning for those conditions.
So it sort of sounds like sort of automation control and show control kind of mixed
It
into
is very
one in
much,
a
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's really cool. And so this was early 2000s, right? Is what you
Yep.
said when you started building that? Were you building it just for your own projects at that time, or were you also selling it to other people for their projects?
We would sell it to, or license it anyway, to permanent installations. So like Larev
Okay,
or any other show that needed it, you would basically sell them a software license and all the gear that went with it. And
I see. Interesting.
uh,
So you were using somebody else's hardware and you were just building the software that tied everything together. Is that how it worked? Or did you build the hardware as well?
yeah, generally you use somebody else's hardware. Anyway, like no one. It's not like dimmers where like a lighting company's building dimmers from scratch. Essentially, like you
Yeah,
would buy a
yeah.
motor drive or a hydraulic valve,
I
or
see.
and you had to be able to talk to that and tell it what to do, basically. So Navigator had all the motion control stuff built into it and didn't care what manufacturer the gear came from. Whereas
I
older
get it.
systems were like, if you were an Allen Bradley system, you had to use Allen Bradley gear because that's all it would talk to.
I see. So you were
Whereas we were
agnostic. You
like,
spoke all
bring whatever you
languages.
got,
Yeah.
hire outside contractors to build their stuff. We'll talk to that. We'll talk to that. We'll get it all under
Ah,
one
interesting.
umbrella,
Yeah, that
so you
makes
could
sense.
have, yeah. It was a
So,
nutty, complicated project, and we didn't know how
yeah, sounds
complicated it
like
was
it.
when we started.
It sounds like it. So, did that end up becoming a hardware project too, or was it
Yep.
always
Yeah,
just
we
software?
built circuit boards for motion control. We built
Okay.
all kinds of stuff.
So you became a manufacturer as well as
Yep.
all
Yeah,
of
we were
this
already
other.
building mechanical equipment
Yeah.
at the time, the winches and turntables and
Okay.
hydraulic gear and elevators and all that kind of stuff. But
So your schooling eventually did come back
oh
around
yeah,
and help out,
yeah,
in your career. It wasn't just a waste like so many people who take like
yeah, for
a,
sure.
social studies, or something and end up becoming a, whatever, a touring LD.
Yeah.
Um, but so eventually you obviously start doing a bunch of work with our friends at Tait.
Mhm.
When did that happen? How did that happen? Like, how'd you connect with Tait? Was it just the obvious thing? They're doing these monstrous shows and they
Yeah,
needed.
basically. I guess 2006, 2007, somewhere around there. We met them actually at LDI, and they came over and they had been struggling a little bit with their own sort of how to do controls stuff in
Yeah.
house. They had the same problems that we had 10 years prior, where you had all these different manufacturers of
You
things,
just
and
have a head
you couldn't
start.
make them all
Yeah.
talk together. And so you had like one guy over here on a button and one guy over there on a button and some guy over there on a joystick, and the stage manager going, "Okay, everybody go," and so yeah, we they were a pretty good client of ours for a while. And we were mostly supplying control systems and some mechanical gear to them for the touring shows.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, I remember around that time, Tait was really starting to create these really nutty,
Yeah,
set pieces or automated things on a lot of these shows and flying performers out over the audience. And,
yeah, yeah. That's when
you
they
know,
adopted Navigator, was kind of enabled them to step up in their mechanical automation game.
yeah, yeah. So that obviously that relationship got better and better, and eventually they came to you and said, "Hey, Scott, we think we need to own your company." And
Basically,
yeah, yeah, and I mean, to me, it sounds like a perfect marriage. Like the company that's growing the most of that type of construction, building these massive automated flying sets and stuff,
right.
um, should probably own that control method.
Yeah, they definitely needed a control system to
Yeah.
to uh, to
Did they
move
ever
up
talk
things.
about just licensing it versus buying the whole darn company?
They were when we were first starting out with them, they were basically just one of our clients, so they did the licensing like everybody else did.
Yeah.
And then when they started sort of courting the idea of growing Tate much bigger and getting some financing and some capital involved, that's when
Yeah.
we started discussing take closer relationships, always.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably like most sort of people who are in this business really to create cool things and do cool things and stuff, the business side of it was maybe something that you were probably willing to let go of, or was that not something you wanted to let
Yeah,
go
I
of?
was. I obviously I started as a stagehand, so business management was not really a great love of mine. It was sort of a something you had to do. So I had I had attempted to have a series of general managers, people from the business world, come in and help run the business side of the company. But entertainment's a weird business, and it freaked out
It
a lot of
really
these
is.
guys of
Yeah.
how
Not
it
too many
actually
people
works.
understand. Not too many people
So
get
I
it.
always ended up kind of circling back and getting back involved in the business, which kind of took away from uh, my design time and stuff like that, uh, and the software development and the hardware development and that kind of thing. So I was kind of stretched in two directions. So yeah, any opportunity to basically offload from me personally, at least, more of the business operations to people who actually like doing that, so I could focus more on the gear was welcome.
It's funny because it's such a common thing in our industry. Like, I see so many creative people who realize they need to start a company because that's what you're supposed to do when you grow beyond just yourself or whatever. And they're not passionate at all about running the company. They're
Yeah,
passionate about creating and doing the work and being the scientist behind all of that stuff. I had a business partner like this once, and him and his wife decided to come at me and say he should be the president of the company, even though he was a minority partner of mine. He needs to be the president. He shouldn't be a vice president. But he was a vice president for a reason. He hated, dealing with people and dealing with business stuff. And as soon as we made him the president, he lost all his passion. He did a terrible job. People
yeah,
didn't want to deal with him. And, I just wanted him locked in a little room creating really cool stuff because that's what he did so well.
hmm
And it really ruined the business when we made that change. And I think, again, a lot of people do it because they think it's what they should be doing. I'm not saying this was the case with you, but, and at some point it's just like, you take all this and I'm just going to take this part that I
yeah.
am doing this for, the reason that I got into this.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, business wise, there's sort of a threshold for like I I knew which kinds of projects we wanted to be involved in. We wanted to build those big theaters and the giant theme park shows, and
Yeah.
we wanted to build that big gear. Um, the company was probably the most fun when we were like around 25, 30 employees, but we had to get up to 75 to 100 employees and a big space to be able to do those big shows. And we
Yeah.
wanted to do the big shows. So,
Yeah.
you
It's a
know,
lot of stress at that point. Yeah.
it's a lot of sleep deprivation, a lot of stress, a lot
Yeah,
of,
a lot of stress, a lot of stress. No,
yeah,
I completely get it. Trust me. I only have 10 employees, and for me, sometimes it's a lot of stress because, no matter what, payroll's payroll and expenses are expenses and
yeah,
everything scales. So it's whether it's a $100,000 problem or $1 million problem, it's still a problem. So
yeah.
so I completely get that. So, anyways, they obviously made you a deal that you couldn't refuse, and you became part of the company for a while. And I
Mhm.
would guess that that was a huge change for you. How many employees did Tate have at that time?
Tate had, I think at that time they had a couple hundred.
Oh, that's it? I
Um,
thought they were maybe bigger than that by 2010.
yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it
Yeah.
was only a couple hundred because they were still just in the one building.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah, man, they've grown now, huh?
yeah,
It's a completely different business today.
yeah. You inject some massive amounts of cash and you can grow a
It's
business pretty
so
quick.
true. It's so true. And they certainly have injected a massive amount of cash. So, fast forward, how long did you stay there? A couple years?
Couple years. Yeah.
Yeah. And so since that time, did you like retire after that, or did you just kind of chill out for a while? And did Fisher Technical stay continue?
No, basically Tate kind of folded Fisher Technical employees and
Oh, okay.
gear and everything into Tate, and Navigator obviously
Right.
got pushed forward into being the Tate sort of flagship
Yeah.
automation
Yeah.
system. But yeah, I took some time off after that and wandered around the country,
Good for you.
uh, which was nice. And
What are like the passions that you pursued when you left Tate and took some time off? Like what do you do
uh,
to?
probably the most fun thing I did was I took a 10-month, 40,000-mile road trip to all 50 states and I think 7 Canadian provinces in a 50-year-old sports car.
No,
Tiny,
really?
yeah.
What
So
kind of car?
a 1967 Datsun Roadster.
Oh my God. You could have picked
So
something a little more comfortable, like an Escalade or
no, no, no,
something,
no.
you
I
know?
actually thought about that. I was like, I should get like a truck and like, what's going to make this trip interesting? It's
It's a more fun story.
a tiny little car that I've got to keep running for this entire
That's
trip.
awesome.
But it was great.
So you,
Yeah.
you weren't married, obviously.
No.
Yeah, because I can't see a wife going along
Yeah.
with
See,
that plan. Honey,
I'm
here's
leaving.
what we're going to do for 10 months.
Yeah.
Uh, so how did that go? Was it as cool as you expected, or did
It
it get,
was cooler than I expected.
huh?
Um, I sort of discovered right at the beginning of the trip that I was way more burned out than I thought I was.
Yeah,
Like once I had actually stopped and I didn't have to answer 200 emails a day and
I get
have the phone
that.
ringing constantly. Uh, yeah, I was in worse shape than I had actually realized.
How
And
long did it take you to get out of that? Because like I've had
that trip
different friends.
that trip
Really,
did
the
it.
whole trip. Yeah.
Yeah, I was tired of people when I started and just generally interacting with other humans and figured I would like take off and leave. But I met so many great, cool, generous people out on that trip because like driving that car on that trip is sort of like traveling with a puppy. Like everybody wants to come up and pet it, kind of thing. So you
Right.
just meet
Right. I could
people
see that.
organically, and by the time the trip was done, I was pretty much cleansed and ready for life
Please
again.
tell me you stayed in hotels and you didn't have just like a
Oh no, we
pillow under
camped
the
a lot.
stars. Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I had a
Wow.
tent in the back of the car and
Hmm.
drove that car places it should not have gone, like these long dirt roads in the desert, like just doing really foolish things with it. It was great.
That's wild.
Uh,
What were some of the cooler places that you saw? Because like when you say I saw all 50 states, I went to
yeah,
all 50 states. people don't realize that's a big deal. Like, I've lived in the United States since 1991. I haven't been to all 50
Yeah.
states, in 30 some odd years.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's kind of a big deal. So what were some of the really super memorable states or things that you didn't expect or
I had never seen Yellowstone before, um, and that was unbelievably amazing.
yeah.
Um, and just sort of the vast tracts of land in the Midwest. They say amber waves of grain. They mean it.
Yeah. Well,
It's
have you
pretty
ever
great.
been to upstaging?
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
out in the
remember
middle
the
of the
first time I went to their new shop, which they've been in now for what, 20 years almost.
yeah.
The first time I went to the shop, we didn't have nav yet. And so it was like you go to, you'll see the higher stacks of corn and you turn right at that. And then you go to the third main street, not the first two, but you go to the third main street, make a left there.
Mhm.
I mean, it was just like the directions were, and then you'll pass a green barn and then a red one. And once you pass the red one, as soon as the grass gets shorter again, you turn there. It was wild, the instructions. And it was just driving through a maze of cornfields and stuff,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
really cool
I
town where upstaging is, though.
for sure. I
Yeah,
kept a blog for the trip, uh, primarily for my nieces and nephews to kind of see what I was up to. But then
that's cool.
some of my sports car buddies kind of got onto it, so it became kind of a thing. And then as I traveled around, people would email me going, "Hey, you're going to be in my neighborhood. Sometime you can come stay at my house,"
Oh, that's cool.
and that kind of thing. So the blog's still up, which I still get mail about it and stuff, which is cool.
That's cool.
But
That's really cool. And so, like the sleeping under the stars thing, obviously you just sold your company. You weren't broke, so it wasn't like you
no,
were you were trying to save money. You just wanted to really be like a naturalist kind of thing, or
it's kind of my happy place.
yeah,
I really don't like going to fancy restaurant or fancy hotels with spas and that kind of stuff. I like to kind of like
rough it a little.
if I leave Las Vegas, I like taking off into the middle of Nevada where like there's no other humans. Yeah.
Yeah. I can
So
understand that. Like, especially when you live in a nutty place like Las
yeah,
Vegas, why wouldn't you want to get away? I'm from Calgary and I grew up spending virtually every weekend in the mountains.
yeah,
And about 20 years ago, I built a house in Canmore. I don't know if you know where that
yeah. I
is,
know
but
that's
it's, yeah, between Calgary and
yeah,
Banff, right next to Banff. And I still have that, and I go there. I actually leave in a couple weeks, and I'm there for the summer every year.
yeah. It's
And
beautiful up there.
but even that, like I have this unbelievable view of the mountains, both sides of my house. Really, not a lot of houses around me and stuff. But even that, it's nice to get away from that to where there's no houses at all and
Yes,
no like light pollution and no nothing.
yeah. Stars right down to the horizon.
Oh, I just
Yeah,
love it. I love it so much. And the Northern Lights. I mean, like last
hmm,
summer, the Northern Lights were going crazy for a couple of
yeah,
weeks. It was like
yeah. We
every
saw them in
night we were
Pennsylvania.
seeing them. Did you really? Oh yeah, same
Yeah,
time, around that same. I remember they were in like, was it England or something that was
yeah.
seeing Northern Lights, which was
Way, way,
wild.
way south. Yeah,
Yeah, really nutty. Like people all over weird places were seeing the Northern Lights last year. It was a strange phenomenon. Yeah. So, did you went back to work at some point, like after this 10 months?
yeah. I mean, I didn't sort of voluntarily like I didn't go looking for work, but I started getting phone calls
Yeah.
from past clients and people I'd worked with before who knew I was kind of in the wind, I guess.
Yeah.
So I did a few little projects here and there, and some of those projects were with stunt coordinators that I'd worked with on movie projects because part of one of the cool projects or products that FTSI made was these really high speed, high strength, life safety qualified winches
Yeah.
that the stunt community uses a lot and for all kinds of stuff. Like they've done hundreds of movies.
Yeah.
Um, so I started doing a little bit of that again because the movie projects worked well for me because they were typically pretty short term. And when they were done, they were done. Like there was no getting a call back to come fix a piece of gear because I was all in the dumpster at that point.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the fun part of that is it's still the same gear. Like I just last week wrapped on Supergirl in London, and we're still using the same winches that we built 22 years ago now, I guess, something like that.
Wild. So do you have to go back to Tait and license your own software from them?
No, basically I just tell production, call Tate and get this gear, and the gear
Oh,
shows up from
really?
one side and I show up from the other side,
Oh,
and
that's wild.
off we
That's
go.
wild. You think they'd at least give you a system or something so that you could rent it out and make a little revenue on it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm happy.
that's really, so you've been doing a bunch of movies.
Basically, yeah, that's I've done a few other smaller jobs with like Disney and people like that for like little consulting things, but the
Yeah.
bulk of the actual work I've been doing has been in the movie world.
So if somebody came and said, "Hey, we're building this huge automation shop or whatever, and we want you to come in and run it," you're zero interest.
I have not much interest in that at the moment. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah, good
like I
for
like the
you.
ability to basically, at least now, um, go take off to those places that I like to
Good
be
for
in.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
good for you. Yeah, I mean it's lifestyle choices and it's all important. One of the things I forgot to talk about, I actually want to share my screen because I thought this was so cool when I looked at it. Hang on, I gotta see if I can find it. There it is.
Oh, nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, this.
Yeah, that was a fun project.
I mean, one of the things that blew me away about this video. So these are all each on individual motors. Are each of these balls on individual motors?
Yep.
Yeah, that's wild.
2008, I think. Tiny little winches.
Jesus. I mean, it's very cool. People can look this up. They can just
Sorry, the
search
audio
for this
is
video.
overwhelming you a little bit.
Oh yeah, sorry. Let me kill it. Stop sharing. Oh,
Sorry that the background audio was overwhelming you a bit there.
yeah, yeah. Um, One of the really cool things about that I noticed is you had 1,400 followers on your YouTube page, but 600,000 views of that video. Like I was like,
Yeah.
what? And a lot of your videos were like that. Like you had a lot of views on a lot of your videos just because they were so cool. Like that
Yeah, we did some
that
cool stuff. The
that
Worlds of Color
particular
stuff for
video.
Disney was neat.
Yeah, that particular video, it goes on and on and on. And I actually remember seeing it like 15 years ago or 10 years ago or whenever it was and being blown away then. And I just looked it up again and I went, wow, that's really, really nice. Like now, it's funny because I was watching it and my girlfriend walked in and said, "Oh, what's that? A drone show?" And I said, "No, no, this is way before
Yeah, all little
drones, you
strings.
know?" Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Tate actually used that technology again on the Red Hot Chili Peppers tour with that
okay.
big overhead thing with the. I think they had long, skinny pieces with lights in them, but same deal basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really cool look.
Yeah, the position on all of those objects is mapped to pixels in a video,
Really?
so it's
So
a
if you were laying on
grayscale.
your back on the stage watching it, you'd be seeing a video?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean,
Oh, wow, that's cool.
because instead of trying to program each one of those individually, which would have been a nightmare,
Right.
um, we basically just mapped the position of the object to a grayscale value from a black and white video. So black's all the way up, white's all the way down, and the transition between them determines the speed of the piece. So you can basically just pump video into the system, and it would just do whatever. So if
Weird.
you did a gradient, you get an angle. If you do a water droplet, you get
Wow.
that stuff.
That's really cool. What a great idea. What was that? Was that just an exhibit or was that part
That
of a
was
show or?
yeah, just an exhibit at the Shanghai World Expo.
Okay. Yeah. Really
Um,
cool.
yeah, our client had seen there was a very similar installation in Germany for BMW, where these little spheres came down and did the shape of a car, basically. And our client in Japan, Moriyama, had seen that, and they're like, "We want that, but bigger and cooler. Can you guys do it?" And we're like, Probably." So
Yeah, that's super cool. So since that time, like since after your Datsun Drive and everything else, and you've been doing movies and stuff, but you've also gotten involved with some other stuff too, right? Like I think you were saying earlier before we started recording, you were telling me that you were part of the Rihanna thing at the Super Bowl, which I
yeah,
thought was
that's
unbelievable.
one of the so I'll occasionally get calls for short-term projects like that,
Yeah,
um, where it's like, "Hey, are you busy?" And B, "Do you want to do this?" And one of my former employees, Paul Sapsis, from Sapsis Rigging,
yeah,
originally his dad and uncle had that
yeah.
extremely talented rigger, uh, designer. That was basically his baby was Super Bowl, and he called and said, "Hey, are you busy? Do you want to come do this Super Bowl thing?" And I'm like, "That sounds great. I've never been to a Super Bowl." So
Fun.
basically went and helped out with that.
Not to mention how cool that was. Like
It was really cool.
I am certainly not a Rihanna fan, and I don't generally like most of the halftime shows, but that one, just because
The
of
platforms looked great with the
just
really fine wires.
unreal.
They looked like they were floating. Yeah,
Well, and the amount of safety that had to be involved too for a woman who's whatever she was, 7 months pregnant or something at the time,
yeah,
like just wild. That was such a beautiful show. It really, really looked incredible.
yeah. Tate did a nice job managing that whole thing as well. That was a fairly large team to pull all that
Yeah.
off.
So has like you said, it's weird that you go back and do shows now and all the gear is still the same. Is there not any kind of evolution or motion forward in the
Oh no,
technology for that
there
stuff?
is for sure. The stunt movie gear is mostly not evolved much because it's a tiny market.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of incentive to really develop new gear for that because it's not going to make a lot of money. But um, the basics of Navigator have not really changed at all.
Hmm.
But some of the newer developments in it and newer stuff has pushed on. And a lot of it's driven by the availability of better industrial equipment. So you're not building your own motors and you're not building your own motor drives and amplifiers for that. But the power density of servo motors is really like you can get way more power in a much smaller package now.
Hmm.
Direct drive motors as opposed to motors with gearboxes are dead silent,
Yeah.
um, and much more responsive. So those improvements, Navigator having sort of the innate ability to control essentially anything that moves, the improvements in the availability of motors, actuators, controllers, mechanical gear, and marrying that with Navigator has really upped the game on that end.
Have you been involved at all as like an advisor or anything on the sort of board or committee that advances Navigator? Do
No,
they ever bring
no,
you in
no.
as an advisor? No. That's
Now they
interesting.
figure I'm out in the middle of the woods somewhere, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They don't want to drag you back from a mountain. Uh, so, like, what are you seeing any kind of new trends or technology or anything that's exciting you? Like, being that you're an electrical engineer and you've created some really cool things in our industry specifically in show business, are you seeing any new trends or just advancements that are pretty exciting?
I've seen more in the way of opportunity than I've seen in the way of actual advancement. Um, the current state of the art is pretty good, uh, even though the current state of the art is still largely the same as it was 10 years ago, with the exception of some better higher performing equipment.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, we basically built Navigator with the intention of we should be able to run the biggest surf display show on the planet. What's the toolkit that we need for that? And it's a really good toolkit. Um, it doesn't it doesn't need that much more than it has. So there's not a ton of incentive to push the envelope beyond that. but there are
Yeah.
definitely opportunities to do it that haven't
Yeah.
been explored yet. So it'll be interesting to see if those opportunities get pursued
Yeah.
in the
Do
future.
you do you think AI will ever sneak into automation, even just figuring out some of the rules, getting involved in the rules standpoint, like here's what we're looking to do, what are some potential problems?
Uh, I don't think so because there's not enough data to teach an AI system how to do it.
Yeah.
There's not enough of a data set to actually educate an AI in that. There's AI being used like within like the CAD software. Like if you open SolidWorks or Inventor and use their
Yeah.
optimization tools, that's essentially AI. So there's a lot of that going on the back end.
Yeah.
But as far as the actual show stuff, there's just not enough data for an AI to learn it.
Yeah, it just feels like, to me, a math equation almost, like where you could say, we're doing something in this physical space. Here's the general dimensions. Here's what we're doing within those dimensions. Here's the humans that are going to be involved on these
Hmm.
platforms or different areas. Tell me the complications. Tell me the where we're going to bump our head. Hopefully not literally. So no, not really. Like most of that stuff is probably pretty
It could be me
straightforward at this
being,
point.
to use the name of the podcast, a geezer.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Well, me too. Yeah,
but and I'm not super well versed in AI, but
yeah,
I know you need a large data set to educate an AI to be able to enable it to make decisions. So you would have
yeah.
had to have fed it a ton of show data for it to know, okay, well, for this show, you should do this. And that data just doesn't really exist.
Yeah, so there's another way, like in the intro, and I use this a lot when I'm having strategic discussions with AI. And because I use AI more, not like a lot of people use AI because they want to maybe get lazier, like they want it to do
Right.
the hard work that they don't want to do or write all this stuff that I don't want to have to write myself. But I'll use it from a strategic or decision making standpoint. And so I've just learned this Socratic method, and I was just talking about it on the intro too. And the Socratic method is basically saying, okay, I'm designing this automation system for X show, and here are some of the complications that we're dealing with. And, I want to make it completely foolproof. What questions do you need to ask me in order for me to
Hmm.
provide you as much information as I can to make sure that we're not putting people in danger or we're not hitting limits or we're not, whatever those complications might be. And then it'll just start asking you questions. And you're saying, well, that's a good question. I think it's going to be 14 feet.
Interesting.
And you just keep feeding it information. Then eventually it just spits out this huge document. And you're like, wow.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the output that I've gotten from that method of prompting is unbelievable.
I should give it
Unbelievable.
a try.
Like,
Yeah, I'll play with it a little bit.
yeah. And if you want any advice on it, like just go into ChatGPT or Grok or whatever you use and just say, tell me how to use the Socratic method in prompting you. Uh, I want to write Socratic method prompts to get you to be more
Hmm.
productive. And it'll tell you exactly what you need to do. And really, it's just about having it ask you lots and lots of questions. And it becomes more of a collaboration between you and a really cool tool that might not know initially a lot about what exactly you're doing
Hmm.
unless you've told it that. So, like if you say, hey, I did a show that was this and this and this, and here's the problems we encountered, and here's how we solved them, all of these systems now have memory. So it remembers all of that stuff. And
Right.
so when you bring it a new problem, it'll go, yeah, didn't we talk about that before? So using that information plus what you're telling me today, here's what I can tell you.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm having a ball with AI right now because it's just it's making me less stupid as opposed to making me less busy. And actually, it's making me more busy because I love learning and I love advancing and making cooler things and stuff. So yeah, I'm having a blast with it, but
Yeah,
it's
I'll
not
mess
getting me
around.
into the
It'll,
woods though, unfortunately, which is where I'd really rather be. I'm really excited because I'm leaving in a few weeks and I still work and everything because it's my house up there versus
right.
my house. It's like you going from there to your house in Jersey or whatever. but it's just the scenery and the feeling I get when I walk outside and there's trees and coyotes and
Yeah,
bears and whatever, you're in nature. It's
yeah,
just a
it's
whole
hard to beat.
different thing. Yeah, it's really, really hard to beat. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I missed here. What did we miss? I'm sure we missed something. Are you doing anything crazy fun this year or are you working?
I spent the first part of the year over in London shooting the new Supergirl movie.
Uh-huh.
And prior to that, we wrapped up the new Superman movie. So I've been doing super people for like a year now.
And that's
Uh,
probably
yeah,
all like flying stuff and whatever, right?
flying performers, a lot of stunt stuff, dropping people off of things and running people into
Yeah.
things and
Yeah.
flinging stunt performers around, basically.
Yeah.
The Superman trailer actually drops today, so I got to go see what that looks like.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Yeah.
See
I
what
didn't even
they.
know there was a new Superman movie in the works. So
Yeah,
who's Superman?
David Cornsweet.
No
Uh,
idea.
Not sure what else he did prior to that, but James Gunn from the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff
Okay.
is at the helm at DC now, so that's the first big out of the gate picture
Ah,
for him.
interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
should be good.
Yeah. It's got to be so much more stressful now making movies for these guys, like blockbuster movies, because the distribution model is so much different than it used to be,
Yeah,
primarily because of COVID, and also the little screens, the iPhones and stuff.
yeah,
But everything's streaming now. So like I know I haven't been to a movie theater in a while. Like Top Gun, I think the movies that you gotta see in a theater in
yeah.
IMAX or whatever. I'll usually go to those, but
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the collaborative process on the movie stuff because it's different than the live entertainment. Because most of my background had been live entertainment prior to that, but now we'll coordinate with the visual effects guys and we'll say, okay, well you need this beginning part of the stunt live for a motion reference, but then you're going to transition to a digital performer that you're going to basically build from scratch and just use us as a motion reference. But then you need the end of this to be live because you need to get the performer's face in the picture. So we'll coordinate with those guys to be like, how much of this, what do you guys need to handle from the VFX side versus what do we need from the stunt side? We'll coordinate with the set designers of like this part needs to be a breakaway, this part needs to be soft, this part I need the roof flowing out on this building because we need to come in with wires. Um, and knowing that you don't have a live audience looking at it, you've got a whole different set of rules of like, what can you see, what can't you see, what lens are we going to use on this, how wide are we shooting this? Um, it's really fun actually. It's a
so
whole new sort
are,
of.
are you sitting with like the like stunt people or the DP or like who's
Yeah,
explaining to you what the scene
the
is?
the DP, the visual effects supervisor, um, the art director slash set designer, stunt coordinators, and there's sort of different types of stunt. Like if there's a lot of driving, and like if you're doing a Fast and Furious, there'll be a driving coordinator that has no idea what we do with the wire stuff, but then there'll be a ring coordinator who knows more with the wire. That's
But like how much are you involved in like so will they say we want a guy to fly from here to here in 7 seconds and he needs to be doing this type of like I mean they'll talk to the performer about whether he needs to
yeah.
move this way or that way or whatever, but is it kind of like that or is it
Yeah, it varies. Like on the bigger superhero things, they'll do animatics
okay?
previs basically. So we'll see basically a cartoon
Yeah.
of what they want, up to the full-on director going, "Can you guys do something cool here?" And we'll come up with something like on
Yeah.
on the on the spot, or we grab a stunt performer that we know has this acrobatic skills or whatever. I'm like, "Hey, can you do this? We're going to do a thing," and so
Yeah.
it's everything from we know exactly what we want to we got to fill up 150 frames of film here with something cool.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. So
It's fun.
sometimes
Yeah.
you actually get to sit down with with your thinking cap on and go,
Oh yeah.
what can we do here? This is really interesting.
Yeah. You
Like it's
get to invent
not
new
just the
gadgets
same old
and
boring flying person across the stage or whatever.
no, it's a good time.
Yeah. Were you involved on what was it? Not Superman, Spider-Man in on Broadway? The Jerry Harris
Yes.
thing?
Yeah, we did all the performer flying.
Oh, wow.
For
There
that.
was a
Yeah,
lot of that.
that was Anton on that. Yeah,
Yeah, there was a lot of that. God, they spent money on that show.
yeah.
It
That was
was crazy.
that was an amazing system, and it's kind of a shame that it got a bunch of bad press for
Yeah,
all the wrong reasons. But
yeah, yeah, it did.
yeah,
Yeah,
landing a
it did.
guy in the aisles and on the balconies, and it was live was we were proud of that, and it was a shame that we couldn't really tout it as much as we did because
Yeah. Well, it just didn't last long enough to
yeah,
be too exciting. What about Cirque du Soleil? Like, you did a bunch of stuff with them, right?
yes,
Or just, yeah, a lot?
yeah.
Or,
I did a bunch of stuff with them early, like on O, building the theater and Mystere and that
yeah,
kind of stuff, and then later, Cirque has been gradually transitioning everything to Navigator, even the older
yeah.
systems in the older theaters. So
Hmm.
Cirque's basically a Navigator client now,
Yeah,
like Disney is, and the other big guys. That's how they do their automation now. So
yeah, yeah.
we were involved with a bunch of those retrofits.
And was Cirque, like similarly, were you involved in some of the creative process and stuff, or were they just like put this here, do this, and then get out of the way? Or
I was involved in a lot of the creative process earlier in my career when I was more in the project
yeah,
management
yeah,
area. Later, when we were more of a vendor to them, they basically told us what they wanted.
yeah.
Um,
They had
but
people on their team that
yeah,
managed that side of it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it was a collaboration, but not as much of a clean sheet as it would have been
yeah,
being
yeah,
part of the actual CERT team.
yeah. I get it. I completely get it. So when do you leave on your next journey?
Uh, I'd say about a month or so. I'll probably I have a friend who's doing some backcountry guiding in Alaska this summer, so I want to go up
Oh,
and do a little visit and maybe have a couple of little adventures up there.
wow, that's cool. Yeah,
That's
I've
the
been to a Nuvik. I played in a band in my early years, and we got a call from our agent during one of our rehearsals. It wasn't even an agent. I think it was an agent. It wasn't our agent because we hadn't even put our name out yet or
Mhm.
anything. We were just rehearsing, and they said, "Hey, we got this gig. It's for 14 or 16 weeks in the same club." And we went, okay, we'll take it. And well, don't you want to know how much you'll make? Yeah, yeah. How much will we make? It's 3,500 a week or whatever, right? We said,
Mhm.
okay, we'll take it. And so we're like all excited and stuff. And then he calls us back and he goes, by the way, what's your band called? And we didn't have a name yet. We were just rehearsing. So we had a bottle of Silhouette vodka in the center of the table. And we said, Silhouette. We're called Silhouette. And he went, okay. And so then they hung up again. And we called him back and said, hey, where's this gig? And he says, a Nuvik. And we're like, where's that?
Where?
Yeah, where's a Nuvik? And he goes, oh, don't worry about it. We'll talk about that later. I mean, it's like at the top of the friggin'
Oh yeah,
world, you know?
I've
Like,
driven that road from Dawson City all the way up to
oh, really?
Tuktoyaktuk through
Yeah.
Inuvik and until you
Yeah.
basically run out of Canada.
You went to Tuktoyaktuk.
Oh yeah,
Wow. Yeah, because that was what, like 60 miles or something past Inuvik or 40
past
miles or
Inuvik. Yeah,
something? Yeah.
yeah.
Because so the place we played at in Inuvik was just a tavern in a hotel, right? And people would come in on the weekends from Tuktoyaktuk because
Mhm.
Tuk was dry. I don't know if it still is, but
Yeah, I don't
at
know
the
either.
time it was dry. So they'd come in and party like animals on the weekend, all the people working the oil rigs and stuff. And it'd just be nuts there. Like we had so much fun for about the first 5 or 6 weeks. And then it was just like, oh God, can we
Yeah,
please
I'm
go
out in the middle
home?
of the tundra with nothing.
Well, I mean, first we get there, there's no air conditioning in our hotel, and it's sunny 24
Yeah.
hours, because it was late June when we got there. So it's light out, and there's these ravens that are as big as frickin', humans practically, and they sit on your window ledge.
Mhm.
And they're just going rah, making this loud noise, and you can't sleep. And it's bright and sunny, and it's hot in your room. And so, like, then we started meeting people, and they'd take you water skiing after the gig, like at 2 or 3 in the morning. You'd go out water skiing because it's still light out. And, or we went, there was a guy, and when I look back, it wasn't the smartest decision, but this guy would drink in the bar at night while we were playing. And then he'd go, hey guys, you want to go out fishing? float plane fishing? And we're like, okay, sure. So now we're going with a drunk pilot landing on some lake and fishing for lake trout, which was really cool. I mean, they had like friggin' 25, 30-pound lake trout
Oh
there.
yeah, the fishing's great up there. Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy. It's just wild. So yeah, it was one of the more weird experiences of my life, but it was somewhere between amazing and horrific, all at once.
That's the best experiences are, right?
Yeah, but I've never spoken to somebody who said, "Yeah, oh yeah, I drove that highway and went up to Tuktoyaktuk or the ice road, which is
Yeah.
only open for so much of the year or
Yeah, and I
whatever."
was up there in the summer too, where it was daylight all the time, and you see all the
Yeah,
abandoned snowmobiles along the road from the
of
winter.
course. Yeah, 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 and so we drove a school bus because after we got this gig, we went and bought a yellow school bus and painted it and cleared out all the seats so we could put our gear in it because that's what you did back then. And we drove up there in a school bus, a converted school bus. And it was funny because back then I smoked weed. And so we bought like a pound of this Hawaiian something or other weed. And we were like, okay, yeah, this will last us 16 weeks. It was gone by the time we got to Inuvik because what else were you going to do?
Yeah,
And yeah, so that was quite an experience. So Alaska will be cool.
yeah, yeah. I've been up
Yeah.
before. There were a couple. Last time I was up there, there were some big wildfires, so there were places I wanted to go that
Yeah.
either you couldn't get to, or the smoke was so bad that it wasn't worth going, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm hoping it's a little nicer this year. But
Well, if you're ever going through Banff again, look me up and stop in for a coffee or a beer or
yeah, for sure.
whatever. Say hello, because I'm up there pretty much all summer every year now, like from May or June until October ish.
Yeah, when if this trip does pan out, I'll be coming up through that. So I'll give you a
Oh
shout.
yeah, yeah, absolutely do so. And my house is just very close to the highway, so you could just pop in and have a beverage or adult beverage, whichever you prefer, and say hello and have a nice view of the mountains before you drive through them. So you're gonna drive up. You're gonna drive to
Oh
Alaska.
yeah,
You are a madman.
yeah. I like a good road trip.
Do you?
Yeah,
Huh. I'm
yeah.
gonna have to talk.
My sort of backcountry outfit is I've got a Toyota Tacoma with a rack, and I bring a tent, and I throw a kayak up on the rack and take off basically.
That
And
is so cool. By yourself,
yeah,
and you meet people along the way, and that is
yeah.
so
Hang
awesome.
out. Yeah,
That is really awesome.
it's. I didn't realize how different it was to travel that way. Like usually people go on vacation and they go to places, but they've got 2 weeks or they've got whatever. But traveling where you don't really have a destination or a schedule
Yeah,
is wildly different. It's like, oh, this place is cool. I'll just stay here for a few more days. Or,
that
somebody
is
at the bar
so
tells you
cool.
about this cool thing to go see over there, and you just go over there and spend a couple days. And
I'm
it's
very envious of you because that to me sounds incredible. Like
it's
that
amazing.
literally sounds incredible. I don't know that
I
I
didn't
could do it
realize
by
how cool it
myself
was
though.
till I did it.
I don't know that I could do it by myself. I'd have to convince either my girlfriend or my son to rough it with me for a while. But I mean, just the whole concept of, hey, I like it here. I'm going to stay an extra week. That is amazing to me. Like that just never happens because everything's
That
so
it's
structured and scheduled in
I
my
am I
life.
am ridiculously lucky to be able to travel
You
like that
are.
when I want.
Yeah, you are. That's so cool. And so when you go though, do you make plans? Like, do you say, okay, I'm going to go here and then here and then here? And like, do you have an entire plan or do you
Not
kind of make
really.
it as you
Usually
go?
it's just I have a general direction. Like on this, if I go to Alaska, I know I'll need to end up where my friend is. And I'll kind of look at a map and go, oh, that looks cool, or I haven't been there yet, or whatever, and
Yeah.
I'll connect the dots. And
Yeah.
usually I get sidetracked halfway through and go somewhere else that I wasn't planning on going. And, you know,
Well, I mean, if you love nature, there's so many beautiful places to go
yeah,
on the way and also while you're there. And yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Northern BC is amazing. And
oh, it really is. It really is. It's beautiful. Northern Alberta is a dump.
yeah,
It's just oil wells and Fort McMurray, which is not my
yeah.
favorite place
Burned to the
I've
ground,
claimed it.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I did actually a few years ago. And Jasper last year.
Yeah, oh yeah. Jasper got
Jasper was
leveled.
terrible last year. I mean, I haven't been back there yet, but I hear it's, pretty back. Like a lot of it's back. But yeah, it was terrible. last year
Yeah.
when Jasper burned. We had some very nasty days in Canmore where the smoke was just blowing straight through from
Mhm.
there. But it got me thinking and calling my insurance company and saying, what if,
Yeah. Am I covered for this?
well, because I mean, we're basically in the woods and we're in a wooden house,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, bad things can happen. So, yeah, it got me thinking for sure, even though I've had this house for 20 years.
Mhm.
But yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. This has been educational for me and enjoyable too. I'd rather sit and talk about your backcountry stuff than
Yeah. Then
lights
automation
and
gear, right?
automation. Yeah, no, but I didn't know anything about automation, so I love learning new things. So I definitely appreciate you sharing that, and good luck on your trip. And seriously,
Thank you.
if you ping me if you do go through.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
got friends in Calgary that I usually visit on the way, so that's
Oh,
right next door.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I was born in a little tiny town outside of Calgary, but I grew up in Calgary since I was, I don't know, 5 or 6. So
Yeah,
yeah.
The Calgary friends are actually from the Datsun trip.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
he's a fellow Datsun owner and just dropped me a random email going, "Hey, you can come stay at my house if you want." Like I'd never met the dude before, and
That's
we've been friends
wild.
now for 12 years. So,
That's really cool. That's the cool thing about being in those sort of passion club kind of things,
yeah,
whether it's cars or
yeah,
whatever,
they automatically
guitars or
trust you.
something.
It's like
Yeah, exactly. You're a
you
good
can come
guy
stay at
because
my
you have a
house. I don't
Datsun.
know you, but you know,
Yeah, it's funny because younger people now, like my son is just turned 21, and my sister has a 240Z
oh,
that
nice.
is probably, I don't know what year it even is, 80
That'd be early
something
70s.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an 80 something. I'm not sure though, but it's a Nissan. It's not a Datsun.
Okay.
And anyways, my son wants it, so he's like working her on it. Like, you don't drive that thing anymore. Like, what are you gonna do with it? Because he's just old school. He doesn't want like a new sports car. He wants an old one. Like
Right.
even vets, he doesn't want a C8 vet. He wants a C6 vet or a C5 vet. So yeah. Anyways. All right, Scott. Well, thank you so much, and good luck to you on your travels. And I hope to
Thank
see
you.
you at some point. And Sarah will be in touch, letting you know when this episode launches and stuff. It'll be in a week or so.
Okay. Sounds good.
Cool. Have a good one.
All right. All right. Take care.